Over the course of Ninjago's lifetime, you will find that there have been many different incarnations of the ninja suit. Every single season we do get a new version or maybe even multiple versions, and of course above all else it is to sell LEGO sets. But I do find a lot of people have a debate on which is the better of the bunch, because every single suit is someone's favourite, and I do think that is the joy of opinion. But I have gone out of my way to rank every single incarnation of the ninja outfit, and I have tried to be as fair as possible. I've tried to remove most of my bias, but at the end of the day it is always going to come down to my own opinion. And I will say, I do really enjoy these videos, so it's time to complete the final of the Core 6 Ninja, and talk about the Ice Ninja Zane, and which of his outfits I like more than the others. So like we have done the previous 5 times, this is me ranking every single Zane outfit that we have seen as of Dragon's Rising Season 3 Part 1. And again, like usual, the tier list is in the description down below. And if you want to do it, send it on over to my Blue Sky, because I do love seeing these tier lists. And I always do find myself wondering something about them regardless. So let me not waste any more of your time. And let's talk about, or more specifically rank, the Zane outfits. Like always, we have gone for our usual setup of best, great, good, okay and bad, and these are all the variants of Zane that I have selected. If there's any in particular that are missing, it's probably because I just didn't really have much to say about it, or it's just one I just didn't really feel like needed to be in the list. So for reference, most of the versions of Detective Zane aren't here, basically all the Dragon's Rising ones, but I do have the main version. The other ones are just slight alterations that I just didn't really think needed to be in the video, but these are all the versions that I have selected. And for the first one, it is his new body type form. It's just his plain white version before he was really anything, and I have to say it is very simple, it's very to the point, and I'm just going to put it in good because of it. I mean, what really can you say about it? It is just a plain white outfit. I mean, we've seen it a couple times over the course of the show. I mean, we saw it in his flashback in Season 1, we saw it briefly in Season 7, and we saw it in Season 8. I don't think we ever saw it again, and I don't really think it needs to be shown again because it is, like I said, just a plain white body. And I'm going to put it in good just because of what it is and the significance that it does hold, but I understand why someone would put this lower, and honestly, I did consider it myself. But I feel like good is just a fairly nice place to put it. The second one up is then his original black ninja outfit before he was actually classed as the white ninja or the ice ninja, and like all the other ones, it's just going to be another instance of just simply putting it in okay. I feel like there's not really much you can say about this one either. It's just a plain black suit, and like I said, you will find that to be the case for the one that comes a lot later on as well. It's nothing special, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. And I mean, you could argue that it should be in good next to the white body variant, but I do think that one, like I said, just holds a little more significance. So, as of now, the black suit is just in okay. We are finally then into the actual outfits when it comes to Zane though, and of course the first one is the pilot suit, or just the training gi, and I will say, I do really like this one. In my opinion, it does suffer from the same thing that Jay had, where the symbol almost feels a little too small, but it's definitely still a great outfit, and I definitely like it a lot. I feel like it's just one of those suits that you just can't really hate on. I just think it's nice, simple, to the point. It's a ninja outfit, and it is iconic, so I just feel like I can't really say anything bad towards it. It's just a really nice looking suit, and I think most people would agree with that fact. Although I will say then, coming in after is the pink ninja variant of it, and I do think for the sheer iconicness of it, it has to be in best, because it is just so significant and is still relevant to Ninjago to this very day, and I feel like something like that just simply can't go unnoticed. I mean, fundamentally, it is literally just the training gi, but in pink. It's exactly what it says on the tin. But, like I said, I feel like the fact that it's still something that's referenced in the community, and it was even referenced in Prime Empire, the fact that it's still, to this day, is getting that kind of significance, I think is so beyond me, and I feel like it deserves that kind of recognition. It's not my favorite Zane suit by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think just for the sheer scale of what that suit did, it has to be in best. But I will say, at the same time, the DX variant of Zane is possibly my least favorite of the DX outfits. I don't know why, it looks the most like pajamas to me, and I feel like that's kind of what throws me off. I do still think it's a good outfit, but I feel like it is, like I said, just the worst of the bunch. That's not meant to be a diss towards it, and that's not me saying it's bad, because it is literally in the good category. But like I said, I just feel like it's the most of the problems that I have with the DX outfits, which is the fact that they just look off almost. They don't have any layers to them, they don't have much to it, there's no creasing in it, there's nothing of the sorts. So I feel like for that reason it has to be my least favorite of the DX outfits, and I feel like good is just the best place for it. The ZX outfit also does sit in a very weird realm to me, because I really liked it when I was younger. It was possibly one of my favorite ones. That probably also comes from the fact it was the first ZX minifigure I ever got. But as time has gone on, it's not that I think it's bad at all. I just feel like it's kind of just gone a bit near in comparison to the other ones. Like, some of the other ones I hold in very high regard, but this one I feel like is only really worthy of great. Like, that's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, and there's so much in the ZX design that gets translated into future designs. But the thing is that when it is used in the future designs, it does translate to something that just looks almost better. And you will see that later on, aka the honor robes. But I have to say, in this case, as much as I do still like it, and as much as it does hold a special place to me, it definitely is the case of, again, it's possibly one of my least favorite of the bunch. But that doesn't make it bad by any stretch of the imagination. And I guess in similar vein to all the other ones, I mean, the child variant is literally just the smaller version of the regular one, so I don't really know what more I could say about it. I will say the whole inconsistencies of Nindroids in themselves being able to be kids is a whole nother factor I don't want to consider, but I will say I'm just gonna put it in good. I feel like that's just the best place for it. Like I said, what can you say about it apart from the fact it is just the ZX suit but just smaller? And like I said, the inconsistencies of the logic is a whole nother thing. But again, it's not that it's bad by any stretch, it's just I just never really cared for the child variants, and like I said, it just called too many questions. Casual Zane is another fascinating one to me, because it is for the most part just the Kai casual outfit, but without the logo on the shirt itself. I mean, it does suit Zane fairly well, and I do think it goes fine for him. But I will say, again, like all the other casual ninja, there's not really too much to necessarily say about it. I mean, I'll put it in goods. Like, I prefer it to these three, weirdly, but it's not like it's anything of significance. And like I said, it does just match in Kai's design in a lot of different ways, but Kai's one just kind of does it better, because the more unique flair to the Kai design does give it that edge, which makes this one look more plain in comparison. And that's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time I have to consider the fact that the Kai one is just simply better. So for that reason, it's going to get a very solid good. And even though I feel like I've been quite negative so far on Zane, trust me, it does get a lot better. And I mean, starting with Kimono Zane, I really like the kimono design. In my opinion, it's one of the best blend of the colors, and I do think that just stems from the fact I like black and white. I mean, look at my channel logo. So for that reason, it has to be in best. I mean, in my opinion, it just is just really nice colors for Zane and a really nice design in general, so I think that combination really did do wonders for it. I mean, it does, in my opinion, like I said, have the best blend of all of the ninja, and it's not like any of them have a bad blend by any stretch, but at the same time, I just really like black, white, and gold altogether, and you'll see that reflected in any suit that has black, white, and gold altogether, even though it's a relatively rare occurrence. The corrupted version of Zane I do still like, because of course it is still the kimono outfit, but at the same time it is still the least original version of the corrupted ninja. I mean, the shot that we have of it here is literally the only shot we actually get to see of corrupted Zane, and you can see that is being translated, because it is literally just his kimono outfit, basically just with the different head and with silver shoulder pads instead of gold ones. So even though it doesn't really do too much in the way of redesigning it, it does still look really good. But these one-off designs I do find myself always putting in the good category regardless, but that's not exactly like it's bad, it's just when you compare this to this, it's just a whole different gravy. I mean, every time I look at it I just go, yeah, that's really cool, but at the same time the actual kimono outfit exists. And I will say, the kimono outfit of Zane specifically, I mean, the minifigure is one of my favorite of the kimono ninja, but at the same time you have to acknowledge that the corrupted one is still got its place in the show, and as much as we never really get to see it, I do still think it is quite nice to see. So, good is where it's gonna sit. The Zane rebooted design is always going to be interesting to me because even though I do think it's a decent design in comparison to the other rebooted designs, I just never really care for these ones. I mean, Lloyd will always be my favourite of the bunch, and Zane is second, but there is definitely a gap between those two. And this one I just still have my many problems with. It's not that it's a bad one by any stretch of the imagination, it's just I just never really cared for these designs. I just think there could have been so much done that could have made them simply better. And for that reason, I'm going to put it in okay. That feels very harsh, but I just don't really like it, especially when I think, would I take this over any of these? However, the gold variants I have to give a little more credit because I do like it on an overall, and I do think most of the rebooted Ninja, I would say that for all of them. So for that reason, this gold variant, I'll give it something. I'll put it about there because I feel like it makes sense. The whole argument of giving gold to something making it better is my equivalent when it comes to Transformers, which is give a character a sword and it becomes better. I do think gold inherently does make something more cool, and I do like the scene that these suits are in as well, and especially the fact that it's Zane who realizes it, I have to give him the credit that he deserves. So I do think good is a good place for it. I'm realizing that the Zane tier list so far is looking very mid, but I promise you, I am going to become a lot more positive very, very soon. I will say though, this is where I do officially become inconsistent, because even though the Stone Armor Ninja also don't have any sort of leg printing whatsoever, I absolutely adore the Stone Armor Zane. It does kind of come from the fact that he's the unique one when it comes to it. He's the only one that didn't match the rest of the ninja, and I do think that is a really big aspect when it comes down to it. But I have to say, I absolutely adore Stone Armor Zane. It's not better than Kimono, but it's definitely in best. It is just a standout outfit for me. I think it's one of those outfits that do just go really well when it comes down to it. I think it's a design that I can't really ignore for how cool it looks, and it's definitely one of the most unique ones because, like I said, it's the only time anyone got their own completely unique design when everyone else was matching. So credit where credit is absolutely due. He has to have the respect he deserves for pulling off such a banger. The Titanium Ninja, or Titanium Zane, Jungle Zane, however you want to refer to it as, is one of those suits that I like conceptually, but I change my opinion on it quite often. I don't know why specifically. I think it's because I didn't like the fact that it is so titanium looking. It is the most we ever got in terms of this kind of color scheme. And even though I do think it is quite good, it does vary between all three of these depending on the day. I will say as it stands, it is in the top of great, and that could have changed by the time this video premieres, but I have to say, I do appreciate it for what it is. It is the best utilization, in my opinion, of the jungle robe, and I will say that even though I think some of the other ninjas' jungle robes are in best, I do think this is my favourite. It's just in comparison to other Zane outfits, it's not the best Zane outfit. But like I said, I think this one does it really well. The shoulder pads are a nice touch, and Zane definitely does stand out when in this outfit. Like I said, I do think a little more white could have done quite well for it. I don't think it needed too much more, but I definitely think it would have gone a long way. But I do think on an overall it's quite nice to see. The Deepstone Zane outfit I also do have a very special place for, because even though it does have the colour scheme I really like, of course it's missing the gold, but again, that kind of comes later on. I do really like this kind of finish when it comes to Zane. I do like the overall look and overall kind of feel that it definitely had going for it. So for that reason, it's also going to get a best, but I do actually, these two could differ a lot. I'm going to leave it like that for now. It's definitely best though. I do think the black and white does go quite nice together, and I do think the background of the titanium is also a nice touch. It's not too in your face, but I think the addition of it on the chest specifically is definitely going a long way when it comes down to it. And also the Deepstone suits in general are just really nice to actually have, so I can't really complain when it actually comes down to it. Future Zane is an interesting one because we never really get to see it at its full scope, and for the most part it is just identical to, for example, the Future Kai outfit, so as a standard it is quite nice to see. It looks like it's a majority titanium finish as well though. I will say it is quite cool for what it is, but it does kind of just join the rest and it's just one of the more good looking designs. It's definitely up there, but I do think it could have done a little more. It's definitely an outfit where, like I said, it looks like it's a majority of the titanium silver finish. I do wish it was more of a white finish when it comes down to it, because I do believe that Zane needed more of the white outfits coming back, and they do come back later on, don't get me wrong, but it feels like at this time, they really wanted to bank in on this more titanium looking Zane designs, and it goes away luckily, but I feel like this was one of the ones that was the consequence of it, because I think a white outfit would have just gone so much further when it comes down to it. Skybound Zane is another one that again utilizes the color scheme that I like most when it comes for a Zane design, and I think for that reason, I feel like it's not going to be a surprise when I put him up there. I mean, what can I say? It takes all the good aspects of the possession design and just makes it so much better and adds the gold to it at the same time. I feel like it is the best utilization of the color scheme in a more modern looking outfit. Even though I think kimono is still a better looking one, I do think this one is a really good utilization of what we were getting at that time. So it has to again get the credit that it deserves. The same does go for the honor robe. Like I said before, I think this is a better utilization of the ZX outfit. I think it does those aspects much better, more specifically the ropes. The symbol is also bigger, which does it better than the pilot. I do think this is just the best looking aspect when it comes to these kind of ideas. And also, it is the only instance of the skybound shoulder pad getting a silver design, which I do appreciate, even though obviously in minifigure form, I believe Hunted Kai came with the same color, but that's not canon, so I'm not counting it. So for that reason, and even though it does have a lot of the titanium effect that I was talking about earlier, I do think it has to go in best. It again does just strike me as a more unique looking outfit, because like I said, where it has those differences, especially in the shoulder pad, I definitely think it is worth note. Because like I said, it's the only canonical instance of the skybound shoulder pad actually coming in the flat silver, which I do think is quite interesting to actually note. They could have very easily have just given him the brown, and it would have gone fine because there is brown in the honor robe outfit, but instead they did go to give him a more unique flair. So again, it is a case of giving credit where credit deserves. The Hands of Time or the Fusion outfit sits in the same realm when it comes to outfits like it does with the Jungle Robe, where I look at it and I do think objectively it is a decent one, but it does just flicker between all these different tiers as the days go by. As it stands, in similar vein, it does go in the same spot as the Jungle Robe, but again, I feel like this one's more likely to go up here than down here. There is some interesting design choices, and I will give it that, but I will say that little monitor on the torso I never really understood or I never really cared for, and I do think the design does flow quite nicely, and I do think the colours work better than the Jungle Robe, but I do just think, again, it's a case of I feel differently about it as the days go by. Again, by the time this premieres, it is probably, again, a very different answer. The Season 8 or the Sons of Garmadon outfit, also sometimes weirdly referred to as the Resistant Robe, but we're not going to get into that. I do think it's a very nice one. It's a very clean design like all the other ones that we did get in Season 8. I do appreciate it for what it is. This is also the start of Zane's bow era, which messed up the minifigure, may I add, in my opinion, but I do think it is a very solid design. I ultimately do prefer the titanium head to the human head. I never really cared for any of the variants where he has the human head, and I do still think this one's really nice. So I'm gonna put it here in best. Like I said, it's just extremely clean looking, and I will always have my reservation against the movie mask, but like, I do think this one is just really nice to actually see. I do think it does feel very much like a Zane outfit, and I do think it says a lot about Zane, because even though it has that very clean and tidy approach, I do think it has a lot of personality at the exact same time. So, for that reason, it has to be best. I did also include Snake Jaguar in here because I do think it was a fairly cool one to see. I mean, I don't really have too much to actually say about it because ultimately I would never pick it above most of the other ones, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I'll put it here. I do think it's alright. It's just a really cool concept and a really cool thing that I think exists at the very right time when it comes to the show. I don't think something like this or something like Snake Jaguar could have been handled well, say in the Wild Brain era. And there's nothing against the Wild Brain era, but I do just think this fit really well into the Oni trilogy. And like I said, I'm not picking it above any of the other ninja suits, but I definitely think it's a cool design for what we got. Also, one of the few instances where we saw these shoulder pads, or the classic ZX shoulder pads, in a later season of Ninjago. So, I'm giving it again credit. The Season 9 outfit sits in the same realm as all the other Season 9 outfits, where in its own season and in its own bubble it is quite cool, but in an overall scheme, I don't really think it really matters or compares to the other ninja suits. I do think it's a good ninja suit, and I do think it's quite solid. I will say the damage to his shoulder I never really fully understood. You can never really tell what it actually is or how Zane repaired himself, so to speak, but I do think it is a very nice looking outfit regardless. I do think it is a design that could have benefited from just a little more. I do know obviously they wanted all the ninja to look a little different, but I will say in the case of Zane, I do think it would have been cool if he could have kept his shoulder pad from Season 8. I mean, that side of him isn't actually damaged. So I do think it would have been nice to have actually had that when it comes down to it. But at the same time, I understand why they never gave it to us, because Zane is technically unique, because like I said, even though he hasn't got a shoulder pad like Cole never actually added anything onto his suit for Season 9. So it keeps Zane unique, but also, like I said, it leaves more to be desired. But then we round out the Oni trilogy with the Legacy design of Zane, and I will say it's probably the more forgettable one of the Legacy designs. I never really think about this one. It doesn't mean I think it bad, I just think it's just really standard. Nothing really stands out, especially when a lot of Zane outfits do stand out. I feel like this one could have had a little more. I do still think it's in great, but I do again feel like there was a lot left to be desired. And I don't really know what that could have been. I don't know what they could have added to this design that could have made it better. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something. That feeling of something is missing is definitely there. If someone else has had this thought and they've actually figured out what it is, please let me know, because I would love to actually no longer be thinking about what is actually missing from the Legacy Zane design. But like I said, it is still great, but that small little thing is what's holding it back from best for me. We do then get to the Season 11 design, and I do think this is one of the better Zane designs. This is where more blue is incorporated into Zane. This is where we do get more of that icy feel to his outfit, and I definitely do really like that. And I definitely think this was a great introduction when it comes down to that fact. So for that reason, I am going to actually give this one best. I love the mask that's introduced. The Legacy hood I think is really nice. I do like this new era of shoulder pad as well. It is a very nice touch, and like I said, I do think the colours work very well. It's more of a plain design, yes, but I do think that works in its favour because it's meant to be like an all-purpose suit. And like I said, so many other things get added to this suit later on down the line, and that makes it more unique. But as a base suit for the Wild Brain era, this definitely did do a lot for it. The Forbidden Spin Jitsu design is the one that we get to see the most of the bunch, and I definitely think it suits Zane the most because he was clearly the one in thought when they actually made it. So I do think it's a fairly cool one, but in similar vein to a lot of the other kind of gimmicks that we get to see, I just never really cared for it when it comes down to it, because all of these I will automatically pick above this. Like I said, it was very clearly made for Zane in mind, and I do think that's really nice, but that doesn't necessarily make it good. I do think it's a cool overall thought and a cool design, but I do feel like it's a very special kind of circumstance in very similar vein to the Season 9 outfit. So good is kind of where it has to sit for that reason, but it definitely does get a lot of appreciation from me. The Ice Emperor design I do think is really cool. I do think conceptually speaking it's a very nice looking outfit, and I do think it's very imposing when it comes down to it. I do think it's very much worthy of the best category, but I feel like it also needs to be in great. That's not me saying that it's not worthy of best, but at the same time, in similar vein to most of the things that are in good, I would pick anything in best above the Ice Emperor, and also it is very specific to the season that it's in. Let's just ignore Crystallized. But I will say that even though it does feel very specific and I feel like I can't utilize it anywhere else, I do think it has to be up there, purely down to the fact that it's just a really cool looking design in general. Let's then get to the anime designs. I kind of just want to get these out the way quite quick because these two are basically the same to me, and the Ice Emperor one, I mean, it is just straight up in bad. I don't like this one whatsoever. The base variant of Zane, I do honestly think is okay. It does really make Zane look more mechanical than I like to think, but I do think it's ultimately fine. And then the kind of four-armed, four-legged Minotaur kind of aesthetic he goes, I do think on paper it's cool, but as a Zane outfit, I don't really like it. My problem with the Ice Emperor specifically is the fact he's nowhere near as imposing as I'd assume he would look like in this kind of animation style. He doesn't look big, he doesn't look like a threat, he doesn't look like a villain by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like they could have done much better. And like I said, as the regular Zane designs, or the regular Zane variants more specifically, I do think it just makes Zane look more robotic than I like to think he actually looks. Of course, he is a robot and we have to acknowledge that fact, but I do feel like these designs make him look a little too much in that direction, and for that reason I just don't really care for them. And like I said, the multiple arms and the multiple legs just doesn't really feel like Zane at all. Detective Zane is another one that I do think is really cool in concept, and I really wish he didn't come back, even though he technically didn't. I just wish the design in general never came back in Dragon's Rising. This one, I do think exists really cool in the episode that it's in, and if I'm thinking of it specifically from that episode, it probably would be top of best. But when it comes down to it, in similar vein to all of these, they're very specific, I have to put it in good. Again, it feels extremely harsh, but again, I wouldn't pick Detective Zane over an actual Zane outfit. I do feel like a lot of people would, and I do respect that, but at the same time, personally for me, it's just an outfit that I think is really cool in a vacuum. I just wouldn't pick it above any of the others. Hero Zane I do find to be an interesting one because he's probably the least changed of all of the Hero Ninja. I mean, all of them have some sort of significance difference to them, but for the most part, they kind of just give Zane the gold arms, and then they kind of just change the belt on his torso. So it's not exactly like much changes from a season 11 to a season 13 outfit. I will put it in great because I do still really like it, and I do like the blend of the gold with the rest of it, but I just don't really feel like it does too much. It's tough because I do think it's a good one, and the Hero Ninja generally speaking are just very solid looking outfits, but like I said, in this case it does just feel a lot like they didn't know what to do with the Zane outfit, so they kind of just did the minimum to make him blend in with the rest. So even though I do still think it's a great addition, it just doesn't really do too much for me. Island Zane though for me is a really cool looking outfit. I do feel like Zane has a really cool design when it comes down to it. I do feel like a lot of the ninja have really cool island outfits, and I feel like generally speaking it is just a very solid one, but I do like the overall aesthetic of it, and I have to put it in the best because of it. I mean, they give him the more shirtless design, they give him more of the titanium feel. He basically seems to be sleeveless, which I do think is also a very nice touch. I do think it is a very solid looking outfit, and definitely one that Zane stands out in. I do think to an extent it's unfortunate that the minifigure is technically inaccurate, because it has a white arm when it shouldn't, but I do think the show design is a really good looking one regardless of that. I'm gonna quickfire the next two because I just don't really have a lot to say about either of them. I will say the scuba suit, like I do with all the scuba suits, I just don't care for. I'm gonna be honest, it's in bad, especially because Zane technically doesn't even need it. And then I will say again, you have another black outfit, and in similar vein to the other one, it's just gonna go in okay. Both of them are just kind of there for me. Like I said, I just never really have too much to say about ones like this, especially considering I kind of forgot that the same scuba suit even existed, but that kind of also just speaks to the fact that I barely rewatch Seabound. And like I said, the fact that there is no practical use to the suit also just kind of makes it a bit bad to me, so I just had to put it in bad because I just didn't have anything nice to say about it. And like I said, a black ninja suit, nice, simple, and to the point. The fugitive suit, like all the other fugitive suits for me, is just a really cool one. I will say Zane's is probably the least favourite of the bunch for me, but that doesn't come from a place of me not liking it. That just kind of comes from the fact that even though it does flow really well and just looks really cool as an outfit, I just simply prefer the others to this one. I do still think it's in best, because it does still do really well for itself, but at the same time, like I said, it's like saying it's the worst of something that's perfect. It's still great, it's just not really the one that you think of. Like I said, I just think it could have benefited from better colours. I do think in particular, I do wish the arms weren't as matte as they come across in this. I do wish there was a little more of a reflective nature, but I do feel like at this time in Ninjago, they weren't really making Zane too reflective, so I do feel like it's just a consequence of the time. So I'm going to give it what it still deserves, which is best, but still note the fact that I do think it's the one I have the most problems with of the fugitive suits. The gold crystallized outfit I do feel like also sits in the same realm where I do like it, and I do like the gold crystallized suits in general. I just find this one is still one of the ones I just never really think about. When I think of the gold crystallized suits, I think of Lloyd's, I think of Kai's, and I also weirdly think of Jay's, but I never really think of the Zane one. I do still think it's great, I do still think it's a really cool utility, and it does the colors much better than this one, but I do just think it just kind of deserves great for it. I know a lot of people never really cared for these suits, and I do feel like I like them more than most, but I do just think it's, again, one that I just never really think of. Again, a case of a very solid line of suits where I never really think of Zane in that regard. And every single Ninjago suit has that for me. You could probably ask me for all the ninja, and I could give you an answer in accordance. It's just in this case, Zane's ones are the crystallized outfits for me. But it's fine though, because even though I don't think of him for the other ones, in terms of dragon form, this is the best dragon form ninja. The colors work the best here. I really like the colors they use for the Zane. It really does come across really well. It's still only good because it still falls under the guise of the gimmicky kind of one-off outfits that I wouldn't really want anywhere else. But like I said, it's definitely one of the best ones we got. I don't know what it is about it, but the blue that they use for the ice effect, and also the additions of the white, and then the gold dragon aesthetic, really does go well for Zane in this instance. And I do think it goes out saying that it's possibly the best one of the bunch. It also lends itself to the best fight that we see at the end of Crystallize, because the Zane versus Mr. F fight is really cool, and this is the form he's in when he's doing it. So again, it's just a really cool looking design, and really cool in its utility. But again, it has to be good because I wouldn't want it anywhere else. But that's the original show done, and we're now only down to the Dragon's Rising designs, and I do think Zane technically has the most because of the utility of him in Season 3 Part 1, but we'll get to that in a moment. As of now, the dojo outfit, or the core outfit, again is probably one of my less of the bunch. I don't really consider it too much. I also don't really care for the torso design, but I will say, I do still think it's very solid for what it is. I'd probably put it here. I don't know why, it just looks like he's wearing a very low cut top, and I don't really understand why they've given him that. Of course it's to really give off the effect of the chest of him and like the power source of Zane, but at the same time it just looks really weird, and I just don't really think it kind of suits him. Also, is he like sleeveless? I don't know. There's so much about that design I just never really made too much sense of, and the more I think of it, the more I don't like it, so I'm just gonna put it in great and forget it exists. The Season 1 outfit for Zane, I really don't know how I feel about it. Honestly, if there was any of these designs I wouldn't be able to isolate my opinion on, it would be this one. Because I do think it's cool, and I do think the merge suits have really come around for me. At one point I really didn't like them. When Dragon's Rising first revealed these suits, I just didn't really care for them whatsoever. But I kind of am starting to like them, and I feel like you can notice that in my rankings. But the Zane one, I just never really knew how I felt about it. It's better than this one, but probably only just about. I feel like that's fair. I would like to know if anyone else just finds themselves not really knowing how they feel about the Zane merge suits. Like, I do think it works well, and I do like the scarf effect that they do all have, and I do think it works quite well for Zane, but I do also just look at it and go, I don't really know. Like, it's such a weird outfit, and like I said, I'm slowly coming around to it. I feel like this time next year I might like them a lot more, because that's kind of the approach I've been taking for them, but as of now, the Zane one just sits in a really weird state of limbo. All I know is that I like it. But to be honest, that doubt is kind of gone from here onwards, because for the most part, most of these are basically some of my favorite Zane suits. I mean, starting with the mech suit, in my opinion, it's possibly the best of the mech suits. I don't know why, it just suits Zane really well, to the point where I'm kind of considering it putting it at the top of best. I don't know what it is about that suit, but every single time we saw it in Season 2 Part 1, I just really liked the look of the outfit. I feel like every time we got to see it in action, and we got to see it in motion, I just think it looked really nice. I don't really know why, because it's basically the same as all the other ones, and I do like all the other ones, I will say. Fun fact, if the J one existed in the show, that probably would have been my favourite of the mech suits. But I will say, the Zane one does just weirdly work well, and I feel like it needs that credit. Same for the climber suit, but to a lesser effect. It's not my favourite of the climber suits. That probably goes to either Nia or Cole for me at the minute. But the Zane one, I do actually think is really nice. I do think it utilises the colour quite well. The nice little tint of blue is also really nice. And I do think all the silver effects go really well. It's definitely another outfit that's going to be in best for me. Possibly around here, but I feel like that could go up in the future. The design just flows really well, and I feel like, again, that's just the benefit of the climber suits. I think the climber suits just in general did do really well when it comes down to it. But I do think the Zane one does flow really well. And again, a case of a really good line of suits, and I don't think there's a bad one at all. I don't know where Zane sits in conjunction with the rest of them, but I definitely know it's up there for me. Similar vein, again, I feel like I'm really just glazing all the Dragon's Rising outfits, but I really do like them. I mean, the Tournament of the Sources Zane, I think is absolutely amazing. They've slowly become some of my favorite suits we've ever had, and I definitely have to give them that credit. And honestly, it might be even better than the mech suits. There's something about the Zane one to me that just looks really cool looking. I think it's a really cool utilization of the design, and just generally speaking, a really good design in general. Again, the case of a really solid line and another standout for me. I mean, the thing about all the other ones that I think are really good, there's always a standout, like I said. But in terms of the Tournament of Sources outfits, all of them are like a 10 out of 10 for me, and I can't ignore that by any stretch of the imagination. I just really wish we got to see Jay and Kai with theirs, but unfortunately, we're just gonna have to learn to live with our imagination. But as it stands, it is my favourite one. We're nearly to the end now though, and to start off with Buff Zane, I don't really know how I feel about this one. I feel like it never really got to sit with the Season 3 Part 1 stuff because of the whole nature of leaks. But I will say, I do kind of like this design, but again, it feels like one of those ones that has to exist in a bubble, because I couldn't see this happening in any season outside of any of the other ones that we've gotten. Like, it's a cool design conceptually. I don't really agree with how it came about in Season 3 Part 1, but that's another video for another time. But all I know is that, even though it's cool on its own, I don't really want to see it again, because it exists and that's all well and good, but I feel like that's just kind of it when it comes down to it, and I just don't really want to acknowledge it outside of that fact. I would like to know if it's anyone's favourite though, because I would love to know why. I did then also include the Ultra Mech Combiner, whatever it's called, that he gets to be a part of, because technically it's a Zane, it is controlled by Zane, so I will give him that. And I think for the sheer scale and the sheer fact that they did it, I am going to put it in great at the top, because I do think, in similar vein to the Ice Emperor, even though it's so specific to what it is, I feel like I just can't ignore what it actually is. Like, it's a giant Zane that he's controlling. He's the size of a building. Like, I feel like that kind of goes out saying that it is really cool. I would like to know if there's anyone that, like, adamantly hates it. And I would like to know what Zane could truly do when he was actually in that form. Could he have accessed his elemental power? Could he have done spin jitsu? There are so many questions when it comes down to it. Because if that big thing could do all the things that regular Zane could do, that would be absolutely hilarious. Like, Buff Zane could do it, so why can't the big guy? And like I said, I just think just for the fact it exists, it has to be in great. And then last but certainly not least is the Storm Zane. This is the one that we get to see in the intro. I'm not spoiling anything to do with Season 3 Part 2 as well, so I'm just going to leave that there. But I've always found these suits weird. I don't really know how I feel about it. And the Zane one I just don't particularly care for. I'm probably just going to put this one in goods, because I just don't really have much to say about it. Like, it matches up with all the others, and I do like that fact, and I do think on an overall it's not a bad design at all. It's just not really one I think too much about, because we haven't really gotten to actually see it. And again, I'm not spoiling anything for Season 3 Part 2, I'm not going to talk about it whatsoever. This is purely in conjunction with the fact that as of Season 3 Part 1, I mean, we only actually get to see it in the intro. So, I'm just going to leave it at that for now. I just don't really care too much for the outfit, but I don't think it's bad at the same time. But that is my ranking of all the current Zane designs. I do think it's fairly spread out. There's not really a particular tier that's quite heavy. I do think, honestly, Zane has some fairly solid designs. It's just, I do think a lot of his designs do vary when it comes to quality. And he also does have a lot of gimmick outfits, in my opinion, a lot of one-offs, and a lot of ones that I just wouldn't really consider in comparison to the others. But on overall, I do think Zane has a lot of really cool looking outfits and a lot of really cool looking designs. And I would love to know what you guys think of my ranking, and I would love to see yours as well. But that is all of the ninja outfits officially ranked as of Dragon's Rising Season 3 Part 1. I would like to know what you guys think of all of these rankings. Are there any that you agree with? Are there any that you disagree with? If there's any you've missed, I would love to see if you guys would like to go back and go from there and see what I think of any of the other ninja. And who would you like to see next? Are there any other characters you would like to see me rank in terms of designs? Would you like to see me rank all the woos, all the garmadons? There are so many characters I could do, but I would like to know what you guys would want as well, because even though I only really like to make the content that I want to make, I also like to make the ones that you guys like as well, and I do feel like I have a nice blend of the two. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay,